Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 6, Episode 26, Tears of the Prophets. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct, and as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are great, we're awesome, we're a great time, and we're sad this week because not only do we say goodbye to the sixth season with this episode, but we also say goodbye to a beloved character. So, thanks for tuning in and joining us for this. We'll try not to bog you down too much before we can transition into season seven. But yes, before we can get there, of course, we have to discuss everything that is this final episode. So, as David said tonight, we are talking about Tears of the Prophets, of course. Lots to unpack here in this episode. But before we do any of that, I always like to give us a little bit of time to check in over our week. And so, David, how has your week been?
Week's been fine. Work's been fine as well, though it's interesting. Here in Austin, the weather is very cold. Tomorrow is going to be the coldest day, at least of the month. Who knows how February will turn out. But I'm usually off on Tuesdays. Tomorrow's a Tuesday, and they're going to cancel work tomorrow. So
Mm.
bummer, missed the
Oh,
free day off.
gee. Yes, right.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah, work's been fine. This week I read The Wind Through the Keyhole, which was one of the Dark Tower novels. So there are 7 books in the Dark Tower series. This is book 8, but it's not one of the main 7. It takes place in between books 4 and 5. It's just more of a just an extra book that Stephen King wrote. He says in the opening that he found himself drawn back to the characters and decided to write this story. Um, and it's an interesting little story. It's 3 stories in one. There's the main characters, the main cast. They have like about 50 pages worth of the 50. There's 300 pages. About 40ish pages of that are the main characters. They're like the setting of why everything else is being told. And one of the characters is telling a story, and in the story being told, another story gets told. So it's like Inception. It's like 3 layers deep. So story within another story. So it's Stephen King is a great author.
Yes,
I don't read much of his stuff.
yes.
Um, he likes horror, and I'm not usually a horror guy. And there are definitely horror elements in the Dark Tower series. Um, but he is one of the best writers out there. You can't deny it. Book 2 of the Dark Tower series, which is called The Drawing of the Three, has a gunfight that is the most cinematic movie-like thing I've ever read. Like it read like I was watching a movie on screen. It was so clear, so well written, and the Dark Tower series is really enjoyable. I really enjoy them. They're kind of disjointed because he wrote them. He didn't write them all at once. As an author, he just, as anyone knows, he just writes. Apparently, he writes 6 pages a day. When you do the math, that just
That's a
explodes into really
yeah,
high.
that's something else. I mean, especially if you
Yeah,
can do that consistently, that's amazingly impressive. Six
exactly.
pages a day. So yeah.
Exactly. So this book was fun. Again, it doesn't. You don't have to read it to understand the original 7 book story, but it just adds a little something extra, and was fun and enjoyable. Nothing else really going on. Finished Silo season 2 this week. It Season 1 is definitely the better season. Not because season 2 is bad, but season 1 sets up a lot of the mystery of what's going on. Season 2 is not as the mystery of season 1 is solved to a certain extent, and so it's more just following up on the storyline of season 1. But having read the books, it was uh, fairly honorable to the books. They did make some changes, some of which are good changes, but Yeah, so season two just finished. Looking forward to watching Severance season two. The first episode did drop this week, but I haven't watched it yet. Plan on rewatching season one before I get into watching season two there. And so instead, been watching Lego Masters, the Christmas special they did this past year, because Lego Masters is awesome. Because Legos are awesome. Legos. Anyway,
Yeah. So
yeah, that's this week. How about you, Barry? What's up with you?
Well, my week has obviously proceeded much like yours since we live in the same area. Yeah, coldest winter on record yet. We still have to get through, February with the infamous winter storm that still kind of hangs over us from a few years ago.
Mhm.
Schools here have already preempted shutting down just in case something goes
Yeah.
on with roads and snow and weather and so forth like that. So my daughter is quite excited because she already knows she has no school tomorrow and potentially no school Wednesday. So there's that. But since I work from home, I will, of course, still be able to work, barring some kind of technical issue, electrical shortage, whatever that goes out elsewhere. So we've kind of been doing the whole hopefully power goes out somewhere else, not here. And then that way we can stay warm and comfortable and do whatever we want while still unable to work. So typically it doesn't work out that way. It's a very specific prayer that we've uttered, but I don't think that's going to happen. Um,
Mhm.
when it comes in terms of reading, I did finally start the eighth book in the Expanse series.
Mhm.
It's different. I
Nice.
haven't really gotten too deep into it, but I've officially started it, so I'm looking forward to going further into that. What has been distracting me from reading is something I mentioned a few weeks ago. Another series, the Animorph series. I was actually
Oh.
able to find all of the books in PDF format,
Mm.
including some of the. They've got like kind of their own versions of like a mirror universe, expanded universe stuff. So I've got all those and I've been reading through them and they're really fun. Surprisingly, I found them to be a lot of fun for a couple of reasons. One, they're incredibly easy reads. As an adult reading a book like this from my childhood, they're just you zip through them, man. Before you know it, you've already read three, four of them, and you're just like, wow. The story moves so quickly. It really helps you
Mhm.
out with getting through them. So I'm probably going to be done with this entire series. Um, with maybe within a week. There's that. But the other part of it that it has that I really enjoy is while it doesn't make specific references to like certain places or anything like that, it does talk about certain types of technology and cultural things that were going on back then. So it's so
Right.
interesting to read these books and they talk about going to the mall and shopping at like Hot Topic, for example, or whatever. And I'm like, these are stores that, they don't exist anymore, or they don't exist in that way anymore
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like that that they talk about doing or having to go somewhere to gain access to something or certain types of information that we can just pull up now or trying to track people down, and no one has a cell phone, and that's the other part of it that just it cracks me
Yeah.
up. And they're like, it's like, how many problems have I read about in these books so far that would be solved if someone could have just whipped out their phone and either found someone, looked something up, contacted somebody else, like whatever it is. And it's just like, yeah, phones, man, it really changed a lot.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy stuff like that when it comes to literature. So that's been a lot
Mhm.
of fun. Also, I started watching this show that, as far as I know, it's over. It ran from like 2012 to 2016. Just found out about it. It's called Banshee, and it stars Anthony Starr, who a lot of you may know from The Boys. He plays whatever that character, the blonde-haired Superman knockoff in The Boys. I don't remember what
Uh
that
huh.
what that character's name is, but in
Um. Yeah. Go ahead.
well,
Go ahead.
in
Yeah.
Banshee, he plays a ex-con who, after spending 15 years in prison, has gotten out and is on the lookout or is trying to hunt down certain people from his past. But somehow he manages to impersonate a sheriff and become sheriff of this small town called Banshee in Pennsylvania. So the show is like, it's how soon is he going to either A, find the people he's looking for, B, get found out as fake sheriff, or see just get murdered from all the things that happen and people who are looking for him who want to kill him and whatever else. Yeah, it's just a lot of that. And I'm so borderline on both on my love hate of the show because certain aspects of it are great, and I think that it's done really well. And there's other things where I'm like, how has he not been found out yet? Why is this show still going on? And so I looked it up just to see how many seasons it had. It ended in 2016. It had 4 seasons, but apparently, from what I was reading and in how it ended, I haven't gotten there yet, and I'm trying to stop myself from spoilers. But apparently, there was enough that they were thinking of continuing the show, bringing it back at some point. But of course, he got picked up for The Boys, and again, yeah, and that's we got pointed out here in our chat here. He's Homelander on The Boys.
Mhm.
So since that show is obviously so much more successful, there's a possibility that he won't be able to do Banshee again. But it's different. It's a very interesting series that I've been, I just finished season one of it, and the whole time I was like, man, this show is ridiculous. That was my only way I can describe it because I said it so many times when watching the episodes. So yeah, there's that. If anybody ever wants to go and check it out, I was watching it on Max, formerly HBO Max, whatever. It's very violent, though. I will tell you that, like, very violent. So just be aware. In fact, there are several times where the main character gets beat up, and I was just like, he should be dead because he just got beat up like 2 hours ago. There's no way he's recovered enough from that beating to survive this beating, and this beating's even worse. So, but there you are. So if you're into that, watch it. I like it in particular for the setting. It's in this small town in Pennsylvania, and there's this weird juxtaposition of contemporary town versus Amish country, and you don't really see a whole lot of shows that feature that, and so that's
Mhm.
nice to watch. But yeah, every episode I was like, how can you top yourself next episode? What are you gonna do to make this more entertaining? But somehow they do it, so we'll see how that goes in um, season two. But we're not here to talk about any of those things. We are here to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Tears of the Prophets. Um, did
Mhm.
you want to give the recap, or did you want me to do it?
Oh, I'm sure you want to. Come on
Oh,
now.
you know.
Go for it. Go for it.
Absolutely. So this episode starts out with actually, how did this episode start out? I've kind of forgotten. Just in that brief moment there. Um, oh no, I remember. Yeah, Gratitude Festival. On D Space Nine, they're celebrating Gratitude Festival, something that Cisco has apparently decided to push forward with them doing because even though they're at war, a state of war, he feels like it's very important that they continue to honor this particular tradition. And so we see Cisco with Kira and some kids and stuff, and they're all very happy and excited to be playing and celebrating the festival. At some point, we see Odo come up. He tries to talk to Kira, who is upset with him because he arrested a Vedic who was raising money on the promenade, which apparently is against the rules. So she's upset with him for doing that, but they sort of kind of get over it. And Cisco has to leave because he has to go to a ceremony where he is presented with the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor, which is great because if you've been watching Star Trek Strange New Worlds, you know who Christopher Pike is. And I think it's a pretty big deal that there's a medal named after him. And I hope. This is obviously an aside. I hope that Strange New Worlds will eventually get to a point where we see why Christopher Pike has a medal named after him. So there you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, they give him the medal. Admiral Ross speaks to Cisco after the ceremony, and he's like, "Hey, you've been championing us, going from the defensive to being on the offensive, and Starfleet has finally come around to your way of thinking, and they want you to plan the invasion of Cardassia." So that is kind of our opener there, and the next bit is Cisco starting to plan that attack. The realization that they're not going to be able to do this without the assistance of the Romulans, and so now he's kind of set up to convince the Romulans to join in this next great offensive movement. They invite the Romulans onto the station. The Romulans, of course, being their typical arrogant Romulan selves, are very much dismissive of the idea and quite rude and condescending to our Klingon allies here. But that's more par for the course. And eventually, though, they do. Cisco is able to convince them that it is in their best interest to do this. He lays out his plan, which is basically since the Dominion can't bring troops through the wormhole, we need to work on pushing them as far back into Cardassian territory as possible so that we can surround them on all sides and essentially starve them out so they have no choice but to surrender.
Right.
And Worf points out that, they can breed as many Jem'Hadar soldiers as necessary. Their issue is really ships and deployment. And so that's why they really need to do this now while they're Dominion ranks are thin. They select this target where there's very little ships, and they feel like this is the greatest opportunity they've had in a while to go and take over there. I guess it's also an area where they do like ship their shipyards and things like that.
Right.
Um, so that's their plan. But of course, the Dominion is also aware of this weak spot in their deployment. And so they've decided to use orbital defense platforms to defend this area. And they've deployed a lot of them, but they're not operational just yet. It's going to be a couple of days before they can be operational. So, of course, Cisco and company is aware of this and realizing they've got a limited window to strike before these things become operational. They decide to head out and stop them.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, during this time, right before they leave, Cisco is contacted by the prophets, and they're basically like, "Don't do this. Don't leave. You're needed here. It's too dangerous for you to leave the station." But when Cisco tells Admiral Ross about this, Ross is like, "Look, we've indulged you on this whole emissary nonsense with the Bajorans, but you're a Starfleet officer. You can't. You're going to have to make a choice. Do you want to all the way be the emissary, or do you want to be a Federation officer? You can't do both." So Cisco, of course, chooses to be the Federation officer he's always wanted to be. They go off to battle, and while all this is going on Cardassia, we see Leggett Damar got a promotion ever since the downfall of Gul Dukat. Leggett Damar is working very closely with Wayoon, and this whole deployment of the orbital defense platform is his baby. And they become aware of the Federation's plan, but he's like, "Don't worry about it. These orbital platforms will be up and running before they get there." And Wayoon's kind of like, "They better be." In walks Gul Dukat, who convinces them basically that he is a man of singular focus right now. He doesn't care about anything other than the downfall of Benjamin Sisko. And how can we bring about the downfall of Benjamin Sisko? Cutting him off from those profits. And by cutting him off from the profits, that'll also allow for ships to come back through the wormhole. Because the profits have been the main enemy all along. We were focused on the wrong thing all this time.
Right.
So he sets out looking for one of the many, many artifacts that the Cardassians had stolen from the Bajorans during their time in the occupation. Finds what he's looking for. He says the magical incantation, breaks open the idol, and basically is hit by a fireball, which is really a pa-wraith that had been trapped in this idol for however long, and it's now inhabiting um, Gul Dukat.
Right.
While Cisco and the task force move off to the Chintaka system, I believe it was, to take over this shipyard, Ducat beams aboard Deep Space Nine, goes to the temple where a praying Jadzia Dax was talking, communing with the prophets, and he kills her and deposits said power race into the orb of contemplation that's in there and causes the orb to go dark, which causes the wormhole to kind of invert on itself and then disappear. This disorients Ben Cisco on the Defiant all the way wherever he is, and he's realizing something is wrong. He's unable to officially finish the mission. Jake takes Cisco off the bridge of the Defiant. Kira and the rest of the bridge crew end up finishing the mission. And then when they come back to the station, no, they get a communication from the station telling them basically to hurry back. Dax is in her final throes. Worf and company arrives. Worf gets to his wife's side just in time for them to say their goodbyes, and Jadzia dies. Cisco, very shaken by the loss of the prophets, by the loss of Jadzia, decides he needs a break. He just can't do this right now. He needs to go somewhere and gain some perspective. So he turns over command of the station to Kira and he leaves. And the last part of the episode, we see him in the back alley behind his father's restaurant, cleaning oysters. And that's it. That is essentially the episode. Now, there are some other bits and pieces, of course, but we're going to get to all those things. But those are the highlights. Jadzia dies, Chintaka falls, Ducat's running around, and Cisco's cleaning food. There.
Yep. Yep.
So, all that being said, before we dive into all the various parts of the episode, David, Mr. First Time Viewer, what did you think of this episode?
Um. Well, I'm gonna start by saying that I think this episode should have been a two-parter. I mean, if you're gonna kill off one of your main characters, I'll just say it now. They didn't do Jadzia justice. I mean, they've never done her
No,
justice
they
the
did
whole
not.
time, and they prove it. They do it here. They said to her. They said to Terry Farrell, "You either live or you die. You can't just back out and become some sort of recurring character." Which would have been fine because that's how they were effectively using her for her role for a long time, especially early seasons. Um, no, they had to kill her off, and her death scene, I was disappointed because Gul Dukat shows up, blasts her, she falls down just like every other single person has fallen down from something like that before. And he says to her, I'm so sorry, I never meant to hurt you. And then he beams away. And then Bashir comes out of the surgery and he says, I saved the symbiont, but I couldn't save Jadzia, and yet Jadzia is still alive long enough to say goodbye to Worf and Cisco, which undermined the whole I couldn't save her from Bashir. Like, is she dead or is she not? Like, nope, she's alive long enough.
Well, basically he's not able to she's dying. I shouldn't say she died. She's dying and there's nothing
Sure.
he can do to avert her death. So
Well, I
basically
just
we're
have
watching it bleed out of her in
I just
this.
have to say, it reminds me of the of Episode 3 of Star Wars, where the little robot doctor comes out and says to Obi-Wan Kenobi, "She's lost the will to live." Like, she's dying because she's lost the will to live. Like, come on, Jadzia. I don't know.
Buck up.
Buck up now. Come on. Yeah, I mean, it should have been two-parter because this is a big blow against the Cardassians, against the Dominion. This is a big battle. Hey, we want you to play in the invasion. That would have been a great sort of like tease for the end of last episode. We're gonna have a big battle this episode. Um, and like, it's supposed to be a happy moment, right? We've had
Yeah,
this big blow against the Dominion, and go ahead, go ahead.
well, you're right, and it's funny because the last two episodes of the show, "The Sound of Her Voice" and "Time's Orphan," while "The Sound of Her Voice" is a great episode, was it really necessary? No, they could have definitely done this as a two-parter
Right,
and given us more. We could have definitely done without the Times Orphan episode, which does nothing. It ties into nothing. At least the Sound of Her Voice episode kind of had some ties with them being on a deep space mission and whatever else. But Times Orphan does nothing. They could have
yeah.
definitely not done that one, given us the sound of her voice early, and then used that time to give us a two-parter here and been done with it.
Well, Times Orphan did get us to see Keiko again, and O'Brien does say to Dax, I think it's Dax in this episode, like, say goodbye to Keiko for me, or take care of Keiko or something. I forget what he says, but this episode revealed the weird hierarchy of who's in charge. Like, wait a minute, when Cisco leaves the station, wouldn't it make sense for Major Kira to be in charge of the station and Worf to be in charge of the Defiant as the number two? Why
Yes,
aren't
but
here?
Kira went with him on the mission.
Yeah, yeah,
So Kira is in charge when he goes down on the Defiant.
true.
She's in charge, and Worf steps up in that regard. But I understand what you're saying. The hierarchical structure of the station and the Defiant, they they don't mesh well. They don't do a good job of explaining who
Right.
does what. So yeah,
Right.
it's yeah. How is that going to work? Now you would think that it would just follow that kind of structure. Cisco, Kira, Worf, Jadzia is next, but it doesn't make sense for Jadzia to not go.
Right.
Really,
That's
think
what I was
about it. It
also gonna
doesn't make
say.
sense for
Why
her to
doesn't
not
she
go.
and Bashir go?
Hmm.
Like the fact that she and Bashir stay back is. Let me put it this way. I knew this was the episode that Jadzia died, so I was looking for it the whole time. It was the whole it was my flaw in this episode because I knew the big major character moment was coming, and so every single scene that referenced Jadzia, I had it in the back of my head. Oh, she's gonna die. Like when she starts the episode with Worf and they're arguing about having a baby. Like cliche alert, cliche alert. Any character who wants to have a family is gonna die.
Yeah, if they don't have a family already, they ain't getting one. That's
Yeah,
just pretty much the rule. Yeah,
yeah.
they did it. It's a horrible job of foreshadowing here. But even still, I can remember when I first watched this episode years and years and years ago, and not knowing any of the back history, the back side of the story, any infighting, between Terry Farrell and Rick Berman and so forth, and seeing Jadzia die was still a shock.
Oh,
But,
I can imagine for someone who
yeah,
did wasn't really expecting it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
didn't know it was very much a shock. But one thing that I do distinctly remember thinking was when they announced that they were taking the task force and going, that Jadzia wasn't coming. And I thought it was so strange because I was like, why wouldn't Jadzia go? And why wouldn't your CMO go? Why wouldn't Bashir go? You're going
Right,
into war. There's
right,
going to potentially be casualties. Why wouldn't your chief surgeon go with you? He's gone on every other mission. Why all of
right.
a sudden is he not going on this one?
Yeah,
So it was just like things like that that didn't make any sense. Like
yeah,
you can't say, well, it doesn't make sense to take all of your senior staff. Sorry, Star Trek, you've made that your whole thing. Your senior
right.
staff always goes on every mission. So
Yeah.
you can't suddenly be like, it doesn't make sense. We need someone here to mind the store. No, you don't. No, you don't. You've done it enough in the past. I mean, yeah, no, you don't.
Exactly.
They should be there. She should be on the bridge. She should be in the pilot seat. Absolutely. Bashir should be annoyingly hovering in the background. Um, of the Defiant on the bridge. They should have all gone on the mission.
Right.
So yeah,
Well, here's the
obviously.
thing. I could have forgiven all that. I Jadzia should have been the host for a profit when Dol Dukat showed up. It should have been the rematch of the episode just 5 episodes ago of when Kira got possessed
Hmm.
briefly and Jake was possessed with the Paw Wraith, the Reckoning episode, and it should have been that Cisco was meant to be the host of this conflict when Gul Dukat was going to show up, and they needed the emissary there to be the guy who would finish off this battle. And his absence meant that Terry Farrell, who never believed in the prophets in any sort of mystical, spiritual way, but only as she says during her prayer, I've only ever thought of you guys as the wormhole aliens. Like, if the episode had been, if she had to fight Gul Dukat as one of the hosts for a prophet, and that's why she died because she was the wrong person for the role. It would have made so much more sense. Like I would have been okay with any of the other nonsense about who's here and here's why these characters in different places. As far as I know, maybe it's just they didn't explain why this time around Cisco went and Kira went, but Dax stayed behind. Like Nog is the one that's it's is piloting the Defiant. Like this is his first time the pilot Defiant. Maybe that's it. Like we're gonna let one of our senior staff stay behind on the station. Whatever. If they had given Jadzia Dax, a really powerful moment of character defining something as her death, then it would have worked. But it's just she stands there, she gets hit by a
Hmm.
blast of energy, she falls down on the ground, just like a number of other characters have fallen down before. But this time it was fatal.
I would
But
have liked that
ugh,
too. Like if she goes into the temple and it's like, she's acknowledging that there's something to these prophets finally, and she's
right,
offering up her kind of like as she's doing, and we see in the episode, it's her prayer explanation, whatever you want to call that. And in that moment, a prophet sensing Ducat's imminent arrival enters her body in an attempt to defend the celestial temple, and we see a battle that goes on here and plays out much like you said. That would have been way more satisfying
yeah,
of an end than what we got. I think it is important to stop here just for a moment and talk about what happened here in regards to Terry Farrell's departure from the show. I don't
sure,
know if we've talked about it in full before. We've mentioned it a few times because we knew it was coming, and
mhm,
it's very important. I feel like to notate a couple of things. Number one being that Terry Farrell did not want her character killed off. That was not what she was attempting to do.
right,
The way that she relates the story is basically that she really did feel like she was more of a recurring character on the show anyway, kind of like what you said earlier with the utilization of Jadzia up to this point.
right,
She wanted to do more. She felt like they should be doing more with the characters, and it just wasn't happening. A lot of the writers also agreed with her. Ron D. Moore, who we know goes on to do Battlestar Galactica, a show that I love so much, he stated that the Worf and Jadzia storyline was seen as a massive success. People really did enjoy the two of them together, enjoyed their banter, the way that Michael Dorn and Terry Farrell really played off of each other and complimented each other. So it was very much assumed by pretty much everybody in the writers' room that this couple would be featured more in the show, and especially into season 6 and season 7, and were kind of upset that they hadn't done much with it in season 6, and a lot of people apparently were gearing up for season 7 to do more with them. So when the word came down that she was being killed, a lot of people were shocked and upset. He even said, like, when they told me, I was like, "There's no way. She'll definitely be back. We'll figure out a way to write her back." And
right,
then they found out about the contract stuff, and it didn't happen. Um, when it comes to the contract stuff, all she wanted was to be reduced down to officially listed as a recurring character in very much the same way Jake, Garrick, Nog, these characters were listed as
yeah,
recurring characters.
mhm,
That's all she wanted.
right,
That way, it would have freed her up so that she wouldn't have to be there. Because apparently, there's a rule that if you are listed as a part of the main cast, you have to show up every day. You have to be go through all the principal makeup and everything else because you are a character that could potentially be in the background of something or whatever. So they're required to be there, even
right,
if they only have one line of dialogue in the whole episode. They have to be there for all of the subsequent shootings and stuff like that. So could you imagine, especially back then when you're doing 26 episodes a season, it takes, 5, 6, or in some cases 10 hours to do your makeup, and then you got your costume on and everything else, and you got to stand around under these hot lights that you've already been there for 10 hours just getting your makeup on. Now you got to stand around and do all this shooting and everything else, and and just go for days and days and days. But if you're a recurring character, that wasn't a requirement. If you're a recurring character, they really only called you in on the week that you would be doing any of your filming, and then they would try to get multiple days of filming out of you, and
right,
then you'd be done for a week, 2 weeks, whatever.
right,
That's what freed her up to do other shows, which is what she really wanted to do.
right,
And they just wouldn't do it. At one point, she even relates, someone told her that if she didn't sign the contract to appear in season 7, um, as
main character,
as they had done previously, that she could go and work at Kmart instead. That was what was told her. And apparently, she was so upset, so heartbroken over that, that she went to whomever it was and told them she just wanted out. She wanted to be done. That there was no respect for her, so she wanted to do it. And Rick Berman definitely had a hand in all that. A lot of her negotiations for contracts, so that did go through Rick Berman. Rick Berman catches a lot of heat for how women were treated in Star Trek in general. There's very few that kind of escaped his influence, if you want to call it that. So yeah, that guy, a lot of people credit him with saving Star Trek, but a lot of what he did really messed up a lot of characters and some great stories. So yeah, he catches a lot of ire for that to this day.
Right.
So yeah, I just like to put that story out there. She did not want to leave. So many people think for some reason that she was trying to intentionally get out of it. She did not want to go. She actually wanted to do more, and they were just like, "Yeah, no." So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
yeah. Well, they definitely. I mean, as Vincent says in the comments here, I think she was killed unceremoniously as a passive aggressive dismissal from Rick Berman.
yeah,
It
that was
feels
definitely
that
his doing.
way.
That was definitely
Yeah.
his doing. He was very much of the opinion that Jadzia, the character, was not as important as she had apparently attained with fans, and that they could just kill her off and stick anybody in there and it would be fine.
Mm.
And it really wasn't. And we're gonna actually end up talking about that a lot more in season 7. But yeah, it really wasn't the case. Jadzia was very much a beloved character, and it took people a while to get over that. And in fact, there are some people who didn't. So again, we'll get into that. Um,
Yeah.
and now, of course, we see the end of Worf and Jadzia, and the potential family unit, the half Trill, half Klingon child that would have been produced there. I don't know if they would have gone through with that all the way. I could see that being uh, like a last minute season 7. She gives birth to this kid. Um, but I think that would have been an interesting thing to have pop up on Trek some 20, 30 years later. Worf and Jadzia's child,
Mm.
now a full-on
Alexander's
adult.
younger brother.
Yeah, Alexander's younger brother or sister, whatever, and watching that whole interaction go down.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
instead
I
we
mean, it
get.
would the whole idea of like she wants a baby would have been a perfect excuse for why she's not there anymore.
Hmm.
We need her to go like she's having a troubled pregnancy because it's a Klingon Trill hybrid baby. It's not working out as well as we want hope. So she goes home to Trill for a few episodes and comes back every now and then because Worf can't leave his station. So whenever she can get a chance to come back to the station, she comes. But she's unavailable, or she's with Keiko because she's also a mother, and like Jadzia has to transition, and like we could have had a whole storyline talking about like what is it like to be a woman married to a man who's in the middle of a war. Like he's I mean, both Keiko and Jadzia. Was Keiko an official like Federation officer of any kind, or was she
No,
just scientific?
she is a obviously she's a Federation citizen, but she is well, she is about a botanist, and that's like her profession. So like when she was on the Enterprise, she worked in the arboretum and cultivated the various alien plants and stuff that they found on different planets. She studied them, cultivated them, and integrated them into the arboretum on the Enterprise, and then allowed them to be transported other places.
Right,
But that's about it. We don't see her in any other. We do see her briefly as a teacher on Deep
right.
Space Nine, but officially she's listed as a just a scientist, a botanist, and that's it.
But she was never like a science officer type.
No, she never wore the uniform, never didn't go to Starfleet Academy, anything like that. She is not an officer.
Got
So
it.
she
Okay.
is
Yeah. But I still think we could have had the Jadzia and Keiko stuff. We could have had an episode where, like, because Jadzia and Keiko are not regular characters, we bring them back for an episode focused on them with O'Brien and Worf accompanying them on some sort of mission. We didn't have to get rid of Jadzia. That
no,
is a huge
no.
mistake. So,
It was a huge misstep on their part. We absolutely didn't have to get rid of Jadzia. Her being a recurring character would have definitely worked. I would have liked to see the ways in which they explain away why she's not there so much. Oh, she's pregnant. She's having some issues with said pregnancy. She's gone back to Trill because again, it's going to be a complicated pregnancy with her being a joined symbiont, and they've got to figure that out. So she's gone to go and get that, whatever, and then she comes back to do a couple things here and there, and then we wrap up season 7 with the birth of the baby,
Right.
and that. This would be a good time to bring up the fact that it's something that happens a lot. Worf getting um, mistreated, getting beat up, getting
Life
maligned in
sucks
some
for
way.
war.
Yeah, it really does. Like, we do talk about, how much it's O'Brien that, really kind of gets a lot of the bad stuff. But if you look at the history, Worf gets beat up, taken out, and made to suffer more than any other character
All
in
of
Trek
Star.
by far.
Yeah.
He was the guy that got beat up by the big bad of the week in Next Generation. Picard was frequently telling him no, or that he was wrong, when ultimately he was right. If
Yeah.
you'd put those phasers up when he told you to do it, you wouldn't have gotten blasted, Jean-Luc. He got the crates dropped on him that broke his spine. He was
Because that's
experimented
a thing.
on. Right. He got experimented on by the doctor who almost killed him. But thanks to those Klingon redundancies, he
Yeah.
survived. He's
I just
his
want to say, we may have said this already, but that bin that falls on Worf and breaks his back was the most empty, most
yeah. The way it
nothing thing
the
that
way
ever
it
fell on
it
anybody.
it hit him, and it sounded like a basketball when
Yeah,
when it
doing.
bounces and you hear the air, right. The way that it's just like, come on, man. You
Yeah,
got taken out by what,
yeah,
and yeah, so I mean, he has that happen to him. Kalar is murdered. He's dropped with this kid who's lame. His relationship with Deanna doesn't pan out. I mean,
his
just
house is he has to give up his house. His house has to be
the,
reinstated.
then
His
he gets to give it up
brother,
again.
his
His
brother gets
brother,
brainwashed.
yeah, brother is killed, then not killed, then brainwashed, and then all this. The Duras family keeps messing with him. Um, Core, Dahar Master, treats him like crap, and now John Cena. I'm just like, man, this dude,
Yeah,
he can't, he can't make it. They don't want him to be happy.
yeah. Oh man.
Oh, so yeah, Worf. Um, I feel for you, man.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why he is like the most successful, or I guess is the most prolific character in Trek. Worf has been in more episodes, more productions of Trek than any other character in Trek history. And thanks to the way that we now do TV shows and episodes, no one will ever be able to eclipse him. That's the crazy part. No one will ever hit his numbers.
Right.
So yeah, that that's something, Michael Dorn. We won't let you be happy. We won't give you a wife and kids and ship to command and everything else. No, 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 no. But you
Yeah.
have been in more episodes of Trek than any other
Yeah.
character, and no one will ever be able to touch you.
Right.
I think someone figured it up one time, and it was like, based upon how they do shows now with the 10 to 13 episode seasons, a show would have to run for like 15 years before someone and a character would have to appear in every single episode just to get close.
Yeah.
Just to get close. And even then,
Yeah, because
it,
there's
it would take,
movies and
because there's movies, there's cameos, there's voice stuff that he did, there's all kinds of things. And it's like, yeah, the show would have to run for nearly 15 years. Not gonna
Michael
happen.
Dorn has it under his belt.
Yes, he does.
His Guinness Book of World Records will be never be undone.
So
Ah,
now, so we've talked about Jadzia's death at the hands of Gul Dukat. Let's talk a little bit about good old Gul Dukat. He has returned. He is very much himself,
mhm.
if worse. And he says to Wayun and Damar when he comes in that he is a man of profound clarity. And he basically is saying that he doesn't hold anyone accountable for anything except for Cisco. All of his woes, his downfall, it's not because he's a bad man, not because he did terrible things. It's because Cisco came out of nowhere and undermined or destroyed all of his plans, and he is singularly focused on bringing down Benjamin Cisco.
Right.
I think that's fantastic. I think that whomever wrote this character understands villains well, and I think that that is the thing that makes a really good a villain is when they have a specific, singular focus, and it's on something that is understandable by us. When you have these villains that talk about global domination and whatever, that's such a weirdly,
Yeah.
it's intangible thing. But when you talk about all of their energy, all of their hatred dedicated to one particular person,
Right.
we can kind of get that. We're a little bit closer to understanding that than anything else.
Right. Yeah. World domination is such a funny sort of like, I want world domination. And what would you do if you had it? I don't know. Planetary galactal
Yeah. Yeah.
domination? What the?
What would you do? What would you do if you controlled the fate of everybody on the planet? Then what?
Yeah. I am terribly bored with all my slaves that just do my bidding whenever I
Yeah.
ask them. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, Gul Dukat. I love the idea that he's. We're not entirely sure if he's insane or not. Like, he's gone insane maybe, and all he cares about is hurting Cisco. Like he tells them, Wayun and whatever his face is, that I just the most important thing is revenge is taking out Cisco. The other two are like, that's not most important. We actually have like tactical important
Yeah.
things, and he's still like, well, I'm still going to do my thing. And they're basically like, okay, go off and do your thing. Like we're going to let you go do that, especially if you can open up the wormhole, which is
Yeah.
what he promises.
What you're
And then
saying sounds crazy, but if it somehow gives us what we want, we're not going to stop you.
right, which again would have been brilliant as a part of a two-part episode, like where he had to do like when he breaks that figurine after doing that ritualistic speaking, like that could have really been drawn out. We could have had a whole like scene in a two-part episode, like focused on him summoning like a Paul Rudd character. But anyway, um, and then when he's done and he's like checking in, and they're like, "You didn't open up the wormhole; you destroyed it." Like that's the exact opposite of what we wanted. And he's still like, "No, this is still good." And I forget his reasoning at the moment about what he said about like this is still a success or whatever. Basically, I think it's like Cisco is affected by it. Um, but yeah, like is Gul Dukat insane? Is he sane but just different? His new focus. Because he says to them like, "I am a new man. I have a new purpose. I don't care that my daughter died. I'm just gonna get revenge on Cisco. That's all that matters. It was Cisco that forced you to shoot her," is what he says to what's the other character's name? It's not Dukat, but
Damar.
Damar. So
I would have
yeah,
liked to see that scene where he does all that. He's got the idol out and he does the chanting and everything, and he goes and breaks the idol, and nothing happens at first. And so then they're like staring at him and like, are you nuts? And then finally, like something happens and
right.
blows him up or whatever. I would have liked that kind of delay. Just they probably wouldn't have done that because they would have felt like it added a little too much comedy into what's supposed to be a very serious scene. But
Right.
I just think that having the delay there would have just done, I don't know, something because it's like, are we supposed to think of these things as real? That that there is this level of spiritual whatever going on, but hey, whatever, it worked, I guess.
Yeah. It. Yeah. I like the idea that Wayun is also like so tired of the Cardassians. Like y'all were the worst allies we could have picked.
Right.
You're in
Like
the
you're by far the worst species we've ever partnered up with. Like
right.
everything you do, that's another reason why I thought it would have been funny too, because it's like once again we're in the situation where we're depending on Cardassian know-how and execution. You couldn't bring down the minefield on time. Why should I believe that you're going to get these orbital defense platforms up on time? Like I would have loved that little bit of throwaway dialogue in there to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, whatever, Damar. Y'all already let us down once before with your promises. I'm not going to believe you. Get it done. Like
Right.
really bash them over the head with their failures.
Right. Yeah. And the weapon platform things were interesting. I did feel like the idea that, oh, it turns out they're being powered by a central energy platform over on this asteroid, and as long as we blow up the asteroid, we can stop them all. It's a very standard plot device where you have some sort of unstoppable machine, unstoppable force, and of course there's the Queen Borg, the Queen Alien, the central platform where the energy is located. And if you could just stop that, I get it. It's an easy trope. It gives you a climactic scene. I just wish they had like systematically just destroyed them all. Like,
You know, we haven't really had an opportunity to talk about the Borg much because Deep Space Nine doesn't really feature the Borg as much, you know. But that's always been one thing that bothered me about the Borg. When we were first introduced to the Borg and this kind of hive mind and everything else, there was no mention of a queen at
right,
all. And I
right,
feel like the moment that they latched into that, it became the beginning of the end of the Borg. The
yeah,
scary thing about the Borg is the fact that they have a decentralized way of thinking. There isn't you
exactly,
can't cut off like you blow up the bridge of the Enterprise, the whole ship is
right,
effectively done. You've
right,
disrupted the power structure, even though the ship can be broken up in parts. If you hit the bridge right away, you're not going to have to worry about the rest of the ship too much
right,
longer. The
right,
Borg don't have anything like that. So
right,
having this decentralized way of doing things, there's definitely advantages to it, and it's way scarier than oh well, we know there's a queen out there somewhere, so screw fighting all the drones, find the
right.
queen and we'll take
Yeah,
them out. And that's the same thing here with these orbital platforms. They were
yes,
impressive because there were so many and they were
right,
so deadly and they were unmanned. So you could destroy them all you want to, but the enemy is not really suffering significant losses because there's no people. You know,
yeah,
it's just weapons. But oh wait, there's that key asteroid, which for some reason, while it has shielding, why isn't it surrounded by these orbital platforms? It should have
yeah,
been obvious that something
yes.
was going on with this asteroid
But
because
it was
it
so impossible.
was right. It would have been impossible to get to, which all the more would have been the reason that you need to launch your defense fleet or your offensive fleet early,
Yeah,
because once they flip the switch and the power comes on, you're never going to be able to get to that
yeah.
asteroid to
When
destroy it.
General Martok said we leave at 5 in the morning, you should have been like, no, we're leaving now.
Right. That's exactly what I said when I was watching it. When
uh,
when Ross said, "Well, it's gonna be we don't know, it's in 2 or 3 days." I'm like, "Well, we're gonna have to leave first thing in the morning." "No, what are you talking about? You
yeah,
got beds on your ship. Get your
right,
ass up there and take
exactly,
off right now. You rest on the way. You
right,
rest on the way. Give yourself
exactly,
as much time as possible."
right.
I couldn't believe that when he said, "Well, I guess we have to leave first thing in the morning." Why? Why? Do you need to catch breakfast at Quarks before you go?
Yeah, yeah.
Get
Quark's
on your
breakfast
ship.
is so great.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's so legendary. We're gonna risk the
yeah.
fate of the Chintaka system
We haven't
on
determined yet
breakfast.
which Starfleet officers are going to stay behind. Wink,
Oh,
wink.
yes. We don't know who's gonna die yet, so, we gotta stay, and we're gonna rock, paper, scissors this over the next few hours and figure out who's staying behind.
I'm
Was
dying over here.
awful. As soon
Yeah,
as he said that, I was like, "What do you mean you have to leave first thing in the Get on your ship, get
right,
going."
right,
You know, and aren't you the Klingon that's supposed to be so, ready for battle that you can't wait? What do you mean first thing in the morning?
right,
Couldn't believe he said that. I was like,
yeah,
that never should have been the line.
right,
Should have definitely been something else like, well, we need to leave immediately, and even then we might not make it in time. Something else should have been
right,
said beyond first thing in the morning. So
right. Yeah, yeah. I agree with Vincent again in the chat. He took it right out of my mouth. The whole idea of the Borg, there is no head of the snake. There is no head on the snake. And that when as soon as you give a head to the snake, you can kill it. And yeah, it's a trope
you
in
know,
storytelling, and I get it, but I wish we could find a way to move around it, move past it.
I mean, if correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that the idea of a Borg queen was introduced until
First
Voyager.
contact. Oh, well, I know at first contact it showed up there,
Well,
but
that's what I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember when First Contact came out and if it came out before or after
we can look it
um
up.
I think it came out before. I think it came out right before.
So First
Um,
Contact is 1996, came out,
and when did Voyager come out?
in Voyager 1995. It started in
Okay.
95. I don't
Well, it
know.
started in 90. So then the Borg Queen was revealed in First Contact because we didn't see the Borg on Voyager until season 4.
Mhm.
So, um, so yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Wait
but
a
yeah,
minute. I thought Seven of Nine was a Borg. Did she show up before that?
Seven of Nine is a Borg. She shows up in season 4 of Voyager.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
Okay, cool.
but it was always just a problem for me because it felt like by giving us this queen, and now it's like we're not fighting against the truly the hive mind of Borg. We're fighting against the collective will of the queen being expressed through all of these drones.
Right.
Because that's really what it became. The
Mhm.
queen was less a central hub for processing and more almost like, yeah, like a regal queen. We must protect the queen. We must,
Right.
like, in from my understanding anyway. I don't know how deep all this goes, but like in ant colonies and so forth,
Mhm.
the queen is really there to produce more ants.
Mhm.
She's not giving directives, and she's not telling them where to forage for food and how to expand and everything else. All she's doing is pumping out babies
Right.
to keep the colony alive. So
Right.
the give, so I mean, the queen is significant, yes, because she keeps the colony functioning, but she's not doing it in the way of oh, we're going to expand to the west, not the east, because I said so, or anything like that. All of that is through some other mechanism in the hive, in the hive mind.
Right.
Um, I wish they had done more with that in presenting the Borg and this kind of hive mentality than what we actually get here, because it very much becomes a if we can defeat the queen and her ruthlessness and the way that she is focused on Seven of Nine or focused on Jean-Luc Picard or whatever, then
Well,
it makes the enemy more specific.
what really I think part of the problem too is that the queen is personal. Like
Yeah.
all of the drones don't care a damn about the individual. They will go about their task bypassing people if they don't think they're a threat. If they
Hmm.
do think they're a threat, they'll attack them, but otherwise they go about their business. The queen, meanwhile, is manipulative and personal and trying to
Hmm.
mess with Picard and such. Yeah, it was a mistake, and uh,
Yeah.
oh well. I mean,
Anyway, yeah,
I don't even
it's
miss
one of
episode
those things I
6.
would love. I've always had this thought in my head where they would somehow explain away the queen and being like, what we didn't recognize or didn't see was that the queen serves an entirely different kind of function. That there is no one queen the way that it's been portrayed.
Right.
This is the queen that they model specifically for certain things. So that's how they can kind of explain away this very personalized version and give it back to the hive mind and
I
then just
I have an idea
stop
for that.
doing queens entirely. What
Yeah,
is it?
my idea for that would be that the queen was a distraction the whole time. If you can convince your enemy that my weak spot is right here, don't hit me right here. This is my weak spot. Well, but you don't have a weak spot, or your weak spot somewhere else. Like that would be brilliant. That's how I would do it. The queen was always a feint.
That is a great idea. I would like that. Like, and that's why you can't truly destroy the Borg. You
Yeah.
think you've hurt them, but you didn't. That
Right.
was just another way of them testing your level of development, advancement. And now that you've defeated a certain number, a certain iteration of our queens,
Yeah.
we now know you are now what we need. And then they just come on mass, and now
Yeah.
you've got a whole new problem because there's no yeah. I that would make them scary again. I would love
Oh,
that.
that's
I
that's
would
what
love
I
that.
that's what I was hoping for the whole time, was that she would prove to be some sort of distraction from something else. But I don't know. Maybe in the
Yeah.
future, if they do more Borg stuff, that's what they'll do with her. I don't
Well,
know.
I'm pretty confident that they will. The Borg are, kind of like Klingons at this point. They're never going away. There's always going to be some fascination with them, and someone will always try to figure out a way to bring them back. And I think that that would be a great way to kind of reinvent that wheel. Would be like, yeah, you thought that, here you are once again looking for this queen. We've been playing y'all for suckers this whole time.
Yeah.
There is no queen. There was never a queen. We did
Right.
this because of the ones of you that we were able to assimilate. We understand that you all have a instinctive
Hierarchy.
an instinctive hierarchy. So we use that against you to
Right.
get you to build up your infrastructure and to make oddly you made yourselves more compliant to us
Mhm.
in assimilation because you recognize certain things about uniformity and about taking orders and and about being subservient to someone being over you. So
Mm.
this was what, and whatever. So you've now put yourselves in prime position to be the ultimate drone,
Right.
and we're coming for you. And then they
Mm.
just surround Earth on all sides by those massive cube ships, and it's just like we've been waiting for y'all this whole. You thought you were done with us. We were waiting for you the whole time.
Yeah.
Ah, man, that would be. That's beautiful, scary. Yeah, I love that. Let's write that down. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Although I will say this is a side note, there's been some talk of the Borg in our lifetime, like the Borg legitimately showing up. The number of people who said they'd be on board with assimilation, you scare me. All right. The number of you that said, "Oh, you know what? I wouldn't mind being assimilated." You know what? Yeah, I can't believe that came out of your mouth. Like,
Yeah.
really?
I can't wait
So,
for my body parts to be cut off and
yeah,
replaced by robotic parts.
just to turn off and just exist and let them just do whatever. What? Do you hear yourself right now? Like, seriously? Yeah, that that was
You know,
wild to
the other thing, I just while we're talking about the board, the other thing that always stood out to me is why do they have organic drones at all? Like, if the idea is like the mechanical nature of things, what is the purpose of having organic life forms that are dronified at all? Like, there must be something that you have to tell us. I don't know if Star Trek has done it, but they have to find a way to tell us why the Borg need the organic life forms, as opposed to like when they conquer a system, they're not. It's not prepared to be conquered. It's prepared to be assimilated. Like there's something about organic life that they're
that they
incorporating.
need.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be fun to work out like the story elements behind that.
Okay. I'd be interested. I'd be interested in that story. I
Yeah,
know there's a couple of books out there that, whether however you want to recognize what book is canon versus what's not, that talk about how the Borg were even formed in the first place. And we can get into all that on another episode because this one would run exceptionally long if I suddenly started talking to you about all the books I've read that have talked about the formation of Borg. And there's many different theories as to where the Borg come from. But, yeah, again,
right,
story for another time. Story for another time.
right.
But yeah, back to our this episode here. We might as well just be wrapping this up with, of course, the man himself, Benjamin Sisko.
Mm,
This was a great episode for him in which we see him being recognized for being a great tactician and Starfleet officer who exemplified bravery and strategic action by taking back Deep Space Nine in previous episodes as we've seen. He's now been honored for that. Now he's being put up to plan this invasion, and we see that the prophets are trying to guide him in a onto a different path. Um,
right,
and he's conflicted here. Lots of stuff going on for Benjamin Sisko in this episode. We see him lose his, mentor and best friend here as well. Um, do you think him saying, "I need to take a break. I need to gain perspective," was that appropriate? Did you like him having that kind of self-awareness to say that, or do you feel like it was a bit of a cop out here to, put us on the what's going on cliffhanger of a season ender?
Well, I guess I'll say this. It is very interesting that Cisco does two things at the end of this episode. He takes his baseball, and when he says to Jake, let's go, he says, let's go home. When the idea had been, I think for this season in particular, that Cisco is of Bajor. He feels at home with the Bajoran people, with at least on the station. The home was the station for him
Mhm.
now. And so for him to say, let's go home, let's go back to Earth, oh man, that's a big thing. I don't know if that's a betrayal of who his character has been, or if it's just a growth for this particular season of his character, his life. But I mean, obviously he has to return at some point. But it's a big deal that at the end of last season he left his baseball to tell Gold Dukat that he was coming back, and that he ends this season by not doing the same. Um, what was your question exactly? I mean,
How do you feel about him leaving the station?
leaving the station.
Do you feel like it made
I mean,
sense, or
I
was this kind of sensationalized as a way to kind of give us an uncertainty factor on the cliffhanger of a season ender?
it's certainly a cliffhanger, and let me put it this way: I am okay with this cliffhanger because I do think that um, the loss of Jadzia, as a best friend, would make sense, and then his uh, feeling that he is like when he comes back to the station, and all the Bajorans surround him and say, "Can you bring back the prophets?" And he says he'll try his best, but then he leaves like he doesn't know how to do it, and he's almost betraying that oath. But um, it was something that was kind of put on him uh, the whole time. Not that it was put upon him by the prophets. The Bajorans recognized the whole idea of him being the emissary. They might have defined it to an extent, but it was the prophets who were making something special out of him. So the idea that he needs some time and anyone can make use of a vacation, a sabbatical. That is a legitimate form of relaxation and recuperation.
Mhm.
The question is he doing it because he truly needs time to recover and come back strong, or is he given up? And so obviously there's a season 7, so that kind of answers the question for us. The question will be not is he coming back? It's going to be how does he come back? Does he come back stronger with ideas, um, with purpose, or does he come back because he's somehow dragged back or forced back? Hey, you're in charge of the station, and you haven't yet been given permission to move on to new orders. You haven't been given new orders yet, so you have to go back. And I'll say this to say that to say this. I thought when he was getting the award, the Christopher Prank Award, I thought he was about to be given a promotion. I thought he was getting that admiralship I had been asking for the whole time,
Um,
which especially would have made sense when the next thing that the admiral says to him is, "I want you to plan the invasion." It's like, I'm just a lowly captain, sir. I'm not. But I mean, he did help with the war at the beginning of the season. He was the admiral's basically second in command, and did a number of technical things there. But I really did expect that, oh, we're going to finally promote him to this position of power and authority in recognition of his ability, not just, here's an award. I don't know. Maybe that's not fair, but
no,
um,
no, I like that. I like how you put that. But I mean, and it would have fallen in line with like something that we've talked about before with how power structures work in Starfleet, and him being the commander of a space station and having that admiral rank would have felt like it made more sense. But as we've also discussed before, not yet, because Deep Space Nine is not technically
truly Federation.
a
Yeah.
Federation outpost.
Right.
So maybe this was like their next step. Like they can't really make him that because his station is not a Federation station yet.
Right.
Once it becomes a Federation station, we can promote him to admiral, and that can be
Right.
his fiefdom there, basically. But until then, we have to basically do everything that we can to highlight why he is the perfect man for that spot when it becomes available.
Right.
And so there's that.
And the other thing I wanted to say about the admiral is when Cisco says to him, "I had a vision from the prophets," and his admiral is like, "Hey, I'm done with this nonsense. I've backed you up, and I've covered for you, but this time you're either on the ship or you're not." Part of me wanted to be like, "Bro, we had some physical evidence last time. We actually had the Paul Wraith and the Prophet show up. Like this wasn't at that
Not
point.
only, you don't have to go that far. You could just say, wait a second. The Prophet stopped a whole battalion from coming through the wormhole
Yes,
for us. If it wasn't for them
yes,
doing that, we would have lost the station.
right,
So when they say don't go, you should be saying, hey, sit this one out. We
right,
owe them. You owe them uh this one thing. If they say, hey, we need our man to stay here, you should say, hey, stay here.
right. And
They took care of a whole enemy for us.
we
Sit
can't
down.
we can't question Cisco's integrity or his bravery. We
Right. It
just
should
got an
not. It should.
award.
Right. You can't and you can't question that. You can't make it sound like it's his fault for not wanting to go on the mission
He
when
just planned it. Yeah,
right. And you directly acknowledge the prophets, the wormhole aliens, whatever you want to call them, and their power and their ability, and then you're going to be like, look, stop with this. Get
right,
over here. You come on. Yeah,
right,
Ross was wrong here. He should have been like, at best, he should have said, I want you to go on this mission, but we're not going to force you. We understand that you have this relationship with the prophets. We're going to leave it to you to
right.
decide to go on this mission or not.
And then if that had happened, I would have loved Cisco to have been like, said to the prophets, had a moment of anger and frustration. Damn it, I am in charge of this operation. I am not leaving my people. If you guys have something you need done, figure it out.
Tell me,
I'm going
right?
on this.
Or tell me directly. Don't give me these vague whatevers. You tell me right now so that I can
Right,
make this decision.
right.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, Ross putting that on him the way that he did just shows just a fundamental lack of awareness at all.
Yeah,
And just like, yeah, what they stopped the whole fleet of ships coming through. Didn't happen. Fake news. Didn't
right.
happen.
I didn't see
I,
it.
I need you.
I didn't
Yeah,
see it.
yeah, I didn't see it. Oh, no, I'm just supposed to believe that a bunch of ships didn't come through, huh? Is that what you
Yeah,
expect?
yeah,
Whatever, man. Oh, yeah, you say they're coming. Sure, dude.
yeah.
Sure, they're
Right.
coming.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Oh
You just
god.
want to stay on your station for Quark's breakfast, don't you? Yeah, get on the ship. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
goodness.
But I mean, but that's also kind of par for the course with the Admiralty. That's something that's often been talked about a lot because we know that in the power dynamic that admiral is the next step up from captain. So it's just like, what happens to these people that they become captains? They are awesome captains. They finally get promoted to admiral, and they all turn into douchebags, like all of them. Like just rank and file, they just become like they're so now way up on this other level of functioning, I guess, that they just completely forget about being captains and leading people and commanding ships and what that's like and going out and exploration, everything else. And they always come back as the most just jerky people. And
Here's
Ross was
what
the first one that we ever saw that wasn't totally like that.
here's what it is, Perry. When you're a captain, you're in charge of a ship. It's your ship. When you're an admiral, you lose your ship. You might be over other captains and their ships, but you lose that integral my ship. You are the captain. Everything is law. Your word is law on your ship. When you're an admiral, you might be able to boss a few captains around, but you've lost that kind of core
I guess so you've
thing.
lost your power because as we've seen, anytime an admiral came on board the Enterprise, they may put their foot into things a little bit and people would follow their orders. But once certain things became known and became clear, and Picard put his foot down, everybody fell in lockstep behind Picard. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
you may be an admiral, but we're with this guy. So sorry, hated for you.
right.
Um, but there have been some particularly bad admirals that we've seen. Ross is probably the easiest one that we've seen that we get along with. He didn't really get in Cisco's way. He was really kind of Cisco's champion
Yeah,
for a bit there. So yeah,
he
we
was
don't. It was
he
it
was
was
come off as a good
interesting.
guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Admiral Nechayev was absolutely the worst admiral that we see. But I think there's something to that. They lose command of their own ship, and so now they become it's not so much that they're jerks, but they're jealous, they're nostalgic, they miss having their own ships and crews, so they become intensely jealous of these captains when they come around them and being like, "You may have your own ship, but I had my ship before you, and now my crew is scattered to the winds," and so forth and so on. So, yeah, there may be something to that. They might wanna um, talk about that. Maybe we should get a show where there's an admiral who says, "You can promote me, but you're not taking me off the bridge of this ship. I'm staying here. Like this is my first executive command decision is this is my ship."
Well, I'm
Um,
just thinking because I know you talked about the idea. You would love to have an idea of like a Star Trek show where it's a group of ships going out into deep space on a 8-year, 10-year mission. Like, have an admiral, have him be a douchebag, have him be like the guy that the captains are all having to kind of wrestle with. But like, you got to humanize him, so you got to find something about him. But like, he's kind of a douchebag sometimes. But there's some moments where like he's maybe a little bit redeemable, like in the heat of battle, he's actually really tough as nails or something. I don't know. Yeah, you'd have to have a great admiral type character on a big mission like that. That would be a blast.
We'll see, and they're talking about once again the new decline of Trek and how all these Trek shows have ended, and the other ones are going to be ending soon. And what to do next if Paramount, if CBS, if anybody's going to move forward with any other Trek projects, really should be maybe sending some feelers out to them. Back, listen, several ideas for some great shows that you guys are missing out on, and here you go. We're going to give these to you. You just gotta put me in an episode and give me a uniform. That's like that's how you pay me. I get to be one alien every week. That's in my contract. I get
Yeah,
to be
you
one
could be
alien every week.
Morn, your own version of Morn. Yeah.
Somebody. I get to be one every week. So
The
you
fun
figure
thing
it out.
the
I want
funny
to be the tallest Ferengi you've ever had. Right here. Like I'll do it. I'll do it.
I mean, they already have to bend over to get through their doorways. I don't know what's up with that, but you would just make that a whole other thing, huh?
Could you imagine me on Ferenginar trying to get through one of those doors? Wouldn't that be hilarious? Yeah, there we go.
Oh, gosh.
So
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
well, I will say with Cisco returning to Earth, I personally liked it. I like the fact that he had been so successful and is finally being like, even in the midst of my success, there have been some significant failures. We did not see Cassidy Yates in this episode, which I thought was strange, considering that we had last seen her and he was talking about how he wanted to talk to her about his behavior and why he was acting so strange,
Mhm.
and then we don't see any kind of follow up from her here. We also don't see her on Earth, at least not yet. We don't know what's coming up in season 7 if she comes and joins Cisco and family on Earth or not. But I would have liked to see some kind of interaction with Cassidy as well as he's trying to reorient himself, fix himself, move forward in some regard. I would have liked to see some of that. But I do like that it's kind of broken him down. And I've talked about this before. When characters hit these kind of low moments, I feel like we've kind of gotten there a little bit with Cisco here. He's had some success, but now he's feeling very lost, and he's gone all the way back to his roots, his fundamentals here. He
Yeah.
is he is no longer Captain Cisco. He's just Ben, and he's cleaning oysters in the smoky back alley in New Orleans here. Yeah, so I really liked the way that they presented that, and I hope they do a good job going forward. I say that like I haven't watched this show 9,000 times, or something. So, but yeah. So, with that being said, and we're coming up here on the end of our show. Any I don't want to say any predictions, but is there anything that you would like to see in season 7 before they close it out?
Uh, it's hard to I don't know if there's anything I can particularly say. I mean, I guess the biggest mystery the whole time has been, first off, what's up with the prophets, the wormhole aliens, and then what's up with the Dominion? What's up with the changelings, the founders? Um, are we going to have peace with them, or are they just going to be defeated in such a way that they're never a threat again? Um, I'd hope for peace on some level, but how would that come about exactly? So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I don't know. It's curious. I'm along for the ride. There's no predictions that I can really make at the moment, other than most
Okay.
storylines have some sort of return back to the status quo by the end. But our status quo will be minus the major characters. So how is
Yeah.
that going to change things? Is Worf going to be majorly changed? Is he going to be terribly depressed and morose her by Dax's absence, etc., etc.? Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be curious.
Well, we will have to just wait and see how things turn out. We will also be doing a recap of season 6 and kind of the story so far episode of our show before we actually dive into season 7. So stay tuned for that. I guess that will be, really our next episode because we've got to obviously move forward here.
Right.
In Trek news this week, the Star Trek Section 31 movie becomes available. It premieres on Paramount Plus on January 24th. So, keep your eyes open for that. I'm really interested to see how this movie works out when it comes to how it fits overall into the franchise and the timeline, because I know there's a lot of kind of like back and forth as to who's doing what and what characters are going to be in this movie versus where they kind of overlap with some of the proposed Star Trek shows that are coming out. So um yeah, I just want to see how that works out.
Right.
As I said earlier, the Star Trek shows, Strange New World has already finished filming season 3 and apparently season 4. They have not released either one of those yet. Season 3 is supposed to be was supposed to be coming later on this year, but with the fires in California, a lot of things have been put on the back burner, so we may not get that show until next year. That also goes for the Star Trek Starfleet Academy show as well. So just keep a lookout for those things. Real quick, David, did you say you finished Silo season 2?
Yes.
Okay, that was a question in our chat there.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
yeah, and actually, if you go back and watch the first part of this episode, he does talk about that. So if you're interested at all, just rewind us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
It's Silo's a great show. The finale is has a great cliffhanger, which is also I like the fact that they keep to some of the major plots of the book, but expand upon them. And then I think I also forgot I hadn't yet finished Squid Game season 2 last week, so I also did finish that this week. That one is a cliffhanger where they said that they're actually going to release season 3, the final season this year. So it's kind of like a Netflix has been doing a lot of the will release like chunks of a season. They're calling it seasons 2 and season 3, but it's more like part 1, part 2. But they
mhm.
haven't yet described when or defined when they're going to release season 3 yet. But I look forward to that because the finale of season 2 was quite climactic. I don't know I don't know how they could go where they could go from here with the show exactly, but I'm sure they'll find a way because obviously they already have.
Yeah.
So yeah, Silo season 2, Squid Game season 2, all great. Looking forward to Severance season 2. A lot of season 2s out there. So yeah,
Well, other than that, guys, we will keep you posted on all the shows, movies, books, things like that we are totally obsessed with at this time. And if you have, I'll throw this out there. If you have anything that you are currently watching, reading, would like us to know about, anything like that, throw it our way. You can either send it to us in a message on our Facebook page or something like that. Put it in an email. There's a link for that for us as well on Facebook. Any of those things, we'd love to hear what it is that you're watching and viewing and being a part of and so forth. And who knows, we might find some overlap there or find something new that we can do another show about. Who knows? So that'll be it for us on this episode. Again, come back for our recap of season 6 and then our beginning of season 7 in the coming weeks. And until next time, guys, take care of yourselves.
thanks guys.